Right now, I'm going to talk about how to nature journal without fear. So fear manifests itself in a lot of ways for nature journalers. A lot of times we procrastinate, like I've been doing for the last couple hours. And one of the main things that causes fear is when we're focused on the outcome. If you're worried about what your pages are going to look like, or you're worried about what other people are going to think about your pages, or you have a certain expectation about how many pages you're going to fill or what those pages are going to look like, then that can be a source of fear. But other than that, there's not really too much that can actually go wrong with your nature journaling. No big dangers to be afraid of. So right now I'm going to talk about some tips for how to nature journal without fear. You'll see me going through my own personal process and dealing with my own fears. And I'm going to try something I haven't tried before, but I'm basically going to be putting some smelly fish and some other things in the water and try to attract some wildlife and see what comes and try to nature journal those. So it's going to be things that are moving a lot. And alright, so I have these leftovers of filleted fish that have been sitting in the back of my car in the sun and some fish skin for a couple days. I'm going to take that and some squid and put it into this. This was something I was saving. I think it's one of those things like fancy soap came in or something like that. Ooh, yeah, this fish is getting really nice and stinky. So I'm going to put that into here, tie a rope to it, and then tie that to a rock. And since the tide is going out from the channel right now, the smell should get spread really nicely. Oh. Luckily I have water here to rinse my hands, because after this I'm not going to want to touch anything. Oh, gross. Probably don't want to get all this juice in the back of my truck either. I might not even need to use the squid, because this is just pretty repulsive already. So I've got that. Yeah, screw it. I'm not gonna. Here's the squid. Do you think I really need to put some of that in? Maybe I'll put a little bit in. That way there's a mixture of smells. Here's that squid. Look at that. Doesn't that look tasty? So I've never chummed for nature journaling before. I know with birds, you know, people use bird feeders. So I guess this is kind of like a bird feeder. In a way, I'm expecting to at least get some cool crabs coming up, if not some leopard sharks, because I know this spot has them. I've fished for them here before. Just gonna tie that real tight. This way they won't be able to carry the food away and should be attracted to that area for a while, and hopefully that will give me more time to draw them, because last time I came here fishing with my friend, there wasn't time to draw them because they move so quickly. They'll probably still be moving quickly. It'll also be interesting to see what other scavengers might come. So today I'm going to be talking all about nature journaling fearlessly. What are some fears that you have that limit your nature journaling growth? For me, it's worrying about the outcome too much, worrying about what the page is going to look like, because a lot of times I probably could draw more and learn more if I just filled more pages and worried less about pretty pictures and stuff like that. So today I'm really gonna try to just draw. So like if these animals are moving, I'm not gonna care. I'm just gonna try to get whatever sketches I can. I'm not gonna worry about layout or anything. I'm just gonna... I don't know if you can see that, but there's a peregrine falcon flying by right there. So I was just noticing how yesterday I was here and there's a ton of seabirds out there, a ton of seabirds, shorebirds, pelicans, all kinds of stuff out there, seagulls, and that I was here yesterday and didn't notice them. That's one of the really cool things about going to a place day after day. And just while I was thinking that, I noticed a bunch of them taking off and flying, and I looked over and a peregrine falcon flew right past. So that's something that I've seen in this exact same spot. I haven't seen an actual hunt or kill, but I've seen peregrine falcons fly by twice. So paying attention to the presence or absence of organisms is important information, and not jumping to conclusions. So it would be easy for me to come up with stories about like, oh, something like, you know, like, oh, the moon is different or the tide is different, to explain why these birds are here or not here. But a lot of times the most simple explanation, like, oh, maybe there was kids or a dog there that scared them away, the most simple explanations are often the true explanations. Alright, so I'm noticing I'm getting kind of nervous already, and I think for me, the thing that I'm actually more afraid of than like sharks is just like what other people think about me. So I'm like overly self-conscious, and I'm like, oh, am I allowed to be here? Or, oh, are people gonna like wonder what I'm doing? Or like, oh, are they gonna think I'm weird? So right out there's all these birds, and I'm right near this road though, so feels like I'm out in the middle of nowhere, but I'm actually right next to this road where people come into this campground. So for me, that's actually a bigger fear, is like worrying about what other people think, which is so weird, but that's actually like a huge fear for a lot of people. So let's try to put that into perspective, you know, and realize that it's not that scary. Other people aren't that scary. But so it'll be interesting to see if all of these birds fly away when I get to out here to my spot. They're mostly seagulls, but there's definitely pelicans in there too. I don't see, sometimes there's lots of marbled godwits here. I'm not seeing those right now. And this is the channel where I'm gonna set up. So you can see the tide is going out, and that water current's going out into the greater bay, Bodega Bay. So what I'm hoping for is that when I put this bait into the water here, the smell will get carried out into the bay and attract things from a further distance. Whoa, I'm already seeing lots of dead crabs. Cool tracks. Those look like godwit tracks maybe right there. Raccoon tracks, gull tracks, lots of poop. There was a whole bunch from over here. There's some egrets over there. So I'm gonna set up my chair here. I'm gonna set up my chair so I can do, yesterday I did a landscapeito pointing that way. I made another video. Oh, down there I can see where all the godwits are. There's hundreds of godwits down there. There's probably some willets down there too. A whole bunch of them down there. I wanna journal them someday, but yesterday I did a video doing a landscapeito here. So I'm gonna set up my chair so I can draw birds and stuff while I'm waiting for things to get attracted to my bait. I already saw something super cool. It looked like when I was walking out to the water, something about this size just shot off really fast, swimming close to the surface, like maybe some type of ray. I think that there's some type of bat ray here, some other cartilaginous fish besides sharks. So that's another thing that I'm thinking there's a chance that I'll get to see. These were really small. Actually, I saw a second one that was even smaller. So those are the kind of things I'm hoping. I think I didn't put it out very far because I want to be able to wash it easily before the water goes down. Now I'm just going to wait a little bit, do a few other drawings, and it's deep enough that the gulls can't get to it. So I'm just going to do a couple other drawings and wait and see what comes. Right now you're probably thinking, okay, Marley, what does this video about nature journaling sharks have to do with me? You know, Marley, you're down in the Grand Canyon right now, nature journaling. You're doing all these nature journaling things. Maybe these don't really apply to the kind of nature journaling that I do. That might be what you're thinking right now, but the reason why I want to talk about fearless nature journaling is because I think it might be one of the hardest things to intentionally learn or intentionally teach, and it's one of the things that doesn't automatically get better the more time you spend nature journaling. So a lot of times we talk about pencil miles, you know, like this idea that if you just put in tons and tons of drawings, tons and tons of time nature journaling, tons of pencil miles, that you're going to get better. And that's really, really powerful, because focusing on the process, you end up getting better at the product in the long run. And that's like really one of the basics of nature journaling and intentional practice. But this thing about these fears that we can have, the things that can actually prevent us from going out and putting the pencil miles in the first place, those are much more challenging skills to learn, more challenging skills to even think about, and much more difficult to teach. And so what I've noticed is sometimes some of the newest nature journalers are exhibiting these fearless characteristics, and that sometimes people who've been nature journaling or people who've been creating art for a really long time actually have these really intense neural pathways of fear or worry or perfectionism or procrastination that they almost have no idea how to deal with those. And those are things that have probably built up over the years, you know? So right now, you know, let's think a little bit about like what some of your fears are for nature journaling, and just trying to practice that self-awareness and think about like what are those things that are preventing you from practicing more or preventing you from drawing certain subjects. You know, some people are afraid of drawing moving animals. Some people are afraid of drawing in public. So think a little bit about what yours are. And that's not going to come easy. You know, these are parts of us that are often hidden, and we often have stories explaining them. Those stories, don't believe that story that you tell yourself. A lot of times those are not really the reason why you're not doing something or are doing a certain pattern. So it takes a while. Be easy on yourself trying to figure these things out. I'm going to talk about a few of mine. So major one for me is just being afraid to fill more pages and being afraid to nature journal about ideas and thoughts. So like right now I've been noticing the speed at which the tide is going down, and I wish I was just a little bit more loose in like getting those kinds of ideas and thoughts like right onto my page and nature journaling about those ideas instead of just nature journaling like landscape ethos and like here's a crab, I'll draw that. So like how to and a lot of times those diagrams aren't as beautiful, so I'll show you a few. So like even this is something that I'm working towards, and partly I'm able to work towards this because I'm working with other people, in this case a kid, and trying to nature journal about ideas and not worry about the pretty page so much. I'm also just trying to nature journal different subjects that I wouldn't normally and just be okay with that. Let me find another one here that is more of nature journaling ideas. So like even this kind of stuff, like thinking about how to show geologic ideas and how to practice drawing these basic shapes is something that I'm sometimes afraid of, because I know that doing that kind of work in my journal can you know, take away from the overall aesthetic of it. So worrying about aesthetics is definitely a major fear for me. And then the other one that I deal with a lot, and happens to me when I'm making these videos, is I'm worried about what other people think about me. So this major fear that inhibits my nature journaling a lot, especially like what locations I go to. And you might think, oh, Marley, he's nature journaling at the zoos and, you know, in all these crazy public places, at the aquarium and museums and stuff like that. But a lot of times I am worried and about people like looking over, like, oh, I'm talking to myself. And in nature journaling, talking to yourself is socially acceptable, but when you're out in nature, you know, it's a different story. And so I worry about that. So those are a couple of my fears. I'm gonna address some of those today. I'm getting distracted by all these nature observations and things that I'm noticing here with the birds, and taking notes about that. But the water level has gone down a lot, and I haven't checked on my bait, so I'm gonna go over there and check on it. It's gonna be pretty dried out pretty soon, so I think I'm gonna have to move it. But first I want to check to see if there's anything over there, and I'm just gonna bring my regular journal and try to keep it dry. So that bait bag has been out there for like half an hour, a little more than half an hour, and there's nothing there. I didn't see any fish. I came up to it really closely. Definitely no sharks or any rays or anything like that, and I didn't even see any invertebrates. There could be things that are microscopic, but not even any really small crabs or anything. So that's kind of surprising. I'm gonna go move the location, and and then I'm gonna take my waterproof journal out there with me, and while I'm out there, maybe I saw some cool stuff while I was out there. Still in that short amount of time, nothing new has been attracted to the bait. So I think what is ending up happening is my fear actually isn't nature journaling with sharks being around. I'm more afraid of like people looking at me standing out in the middle of the channel next to the road with a notebook sketching in like this random place. So I think that's one thing to work on for me. Another thing is I did do some more diagramming, and I also am trying to fill in this Right in the Rain sketchbook. And so this is actually the first landscapeito that I've done, and maybe like one fear for me is actually getting into routines. And so I'm really strongly in a routine of nature journaling in a certain type of sketchbook. So I'm pretty much always using these Stillman and Burns. This is the Alpha Series 9 by 11 that I always use these, and it's to the point where it's like I think I've kind of created a story around like not drawing in small things, but what I'm realizing is just kind of working with it a little bit more and relaxing into it, and also just practicing drawing some of these challenging shapes of like birds in movement. But got the little landscapeito in. Ballpoint pen is something else that I'm not accustomed to, so I'm doing some stuff outside of my comfort zone there. In terms of nature journaling more fearlessly, another thing that I am really trying to work on is the fear of messing up the page, the precious syndrome. So a lot of times once I have a couple good drawings going, or maybe it's a brand new sketchbook, or it's a sketchbook where there's only a few pages left and I really want them to look good, that's when the preciousness sets in and I become afraid to put things in there. So especially when I have my page set up like this, where I only have maybe a little bit of space and I've already created some sort of layout that's coherent, and I have my clips on here, it's really hard for me, even if I see something really cool suddenly, it's hard for me to get into the zone of being able to capture that information without fearing that it's going to mess up the other stuff that I have going on the page. And so that fear comes back to that central thing, which is the outcome dependence. If you don't care what your finished page looks like, then you're going to be able to capture everything interesting. Like for example, I just saw this gull just caught a crab, and now the other gull's chasing it. See, so if I were nature journaling like this, where I have this like page that's like really tightly organized and I'm all precious about it, I might have been too afraid to capture a little bit of this story that's going on. But it's really important not to be afraid, because those are some of the places where we can learn the most. And one thing on that note is that our fears around nature journaling oftentimes are hard to see because we have unclear expectations, or we have a mixture of expectations around what we want to get out of nature journaling. So if you haven't thought about what you want to get out of nature journaling, then you don't really have a clear vision. And so for example, a lot of times people say like, oh, I want a nature journal to learn more about nature and to connect more with nature and things like that. But and that's one of the things that I say too. But check this out. So here is something that I was witnessing happening that was super cool. There was an egret over there, and it was doing this thing where it was like wiggling its foot underwater. And I don't think I've ever nature journaled that before. And that's something that's really hard to draw, and you have to kind of draw in a diagram type way to make sense of it. It would be hard to draw in a realistic way. So this is an example of something that part of me was like, oh, don't draw that because it's not going to look as good on the page. But it actually goes, trying to nature journal this, even if I'm afraid of it, this goes along with my my desire or my goal to learn more about nature through my nature journaling, to learn about cool things like behavioral things like this. So by editing out this drawing and not drawing this out of fear of what it would look like or messing up the precious page, I would have missed an opportunity to use nature journaling for the exact thing that I tell myself I am nature journaling for. So if you notice yourself out there and you're just drawing like a landscapeito, or like a portrait of a bird that's like really detailed, and you notice that these behaviors or these other cool things are happening around you and you're not nature journaling them because you're worried about what they will look like in your journal, that's a problem. That's a fear to work on. Another example is the whole bait thing. So I have, I looked at it and it's like this amorphous thing. Like, look at that corner of the page. It looks totally weird. You can't really understand what that is. It's not really aesthetically pleasing, but that's like a major part of what I'm doing here is I put this bait thing out there. I'm waiting to see if anything shows up. And so not drawing that on the page because I'm worried about this aesthetic and like this landscapeito that I spent so long on the other day and this like layout that I actually put in. If I'm so worried about the look, so that to the degree that I don't actually draw or nature journal that, then that's a problem. So that's another fear that I'm trying to work on. Those are both things that I had resistance to doing, and I pushed myself to do because today I'm practicing how to get more fearless in my nature journaling. One thing about gear that I wanted to point out really quick is this little sketchbook from Write in the Rain just barely fits into this pocket here, and it wouldn't if it weren't for rounded corners. So journals with rounded corners fit much more easily into pockets. That's one little tip. Then another thing here is I'm using this dry bag again, and the other day I tried to use it with no internal organization. It was kind of a hassle, but what I've found is that my entire other nature journaling bag, my normal nature journaling bag, fits completely inside of there. And so that way I could put this here, keep this completely dry, take on a kayak or whatever, and then when I get to a location that's more dry or more safe, I could either just reach into here and use this as an internal organizer, or I could pull out my whole other nature journaling bag. So it's a cool kit. I'm gonna experiment with it more, and that's one of the things I'm taking on my Grand Canyon trip. I recently purchased a wetsuit for going surfing with a teenager that I'm mentoring. And this is the first time that I used the wetsuit for nature journaling immersed in the water. It ended up being one of the most meditative and peaceful nature journaling experiences I have ever had. So one way to deal with fear is to do the thing that you're afraid of and inoculate yourself to that fear. So right now I'm here nature journaling this channel, at some points like sitting down in my wetsuit, and right there's a major road with cars driving by. So I'm sitting there like a total weirdo basically in this shallow channel in my wetsuit drawing and sketching. And so sometimes the best way to deal with whatever fear you have is just to do that thing and to practice it and desensitize yourself to it. Think about ways that you can maybe shrink that into smaller bits and sort of inoculate yourself against that fear, because what you don't want is to cause like a traumatic experience that could potentially exacerbate the fear. But anyways, I was doing a lot of just sketching and writing, just being pretty free with it there and just enjoying it and trying not to worry about the picture. I think this small waterproof sketchbook is actually helping me not worry too much about pretty picture and focus on things I'm noticing, like this vegetation or whatever, some type of algae that's growing that all across the bar over there, not so much on this side. Like, what is that stuff, you know? Is it having a stabilization role? If so, what? And then these like weird cave systems that are over there. You know, it's just sort of cross section here showing the depth. And this one also, you can see that I included myself as a point of reference because I was looking at the vortex streets, the turbulence that was forming downstream for me, doing some little landscape ethos studies. It's really cool getting down low like that. You have an interesting perspective. It would be fun to try to do a proper painting while down there. So anyways, just a fun time. So just think about, like, what are your fears? I didn't end up nature journaling any sharks. So you know, a lot of people are afraid of sharks, but like that's just like a weird example of something that a lot of people are afraid of. But usually nature journaling, there's not going to be any sharks near you. And if so, that's actually kind of cool. But so, like, what are the things to actually be afraid of? Like, what are we really afraid of? Are we really that afraid of what other people think? You know, like whether that be like them thinking that our drawings are bad, or them thinking that our drawings are good, or them thinking like, what is that weirdo doing in a wetsuit in the channel? You know, like these aren't really things to be afraid of. So like, let's try to like practice inoculating ourselves to these fears and identify those fears, figure out what's going on with those, and destroy them so that you can become a fearless nature journaler. Because I think there's so many watercolor techniques and little this and that and cool things about nature that you can learn. But learning how to be fearless is going to help you learn so much faster, have so much fun, and regardless of what your goals in nature journaling are, learning to be fearless is going to help you achieve them. Yeah. I hope you got a lot out of this video. I had a lot of fun filming it. I'm in the Grand Canyon right now, nature journaling and rafting for the entire month of October, and I have a special limited time offer for anyone who joins my Patreon at the $5 tier or above. During the month of October, we'll get a copy of the high quality magazine that I'm going to print showing scans of my nature journal pages from this trip. So a lot of the techniques that you saw me practicing in this video, I'm going to be applying them and using those same waterproof supplies and gear to make awesome nature journal pages while I'm in the Grand Canyon. Don't worry, I'm also going to be doing lots of watercolor landscape detail on my normal paper and printing all of that into a really high quality printed magazine version with pages and notes and all kinds of stuff. I can't wait. So join my Patreon. If you're already a member, you're going to get a copy of this, and for everybody at the $5 or above level will get a copy of this. And if you join right now this month, you will get one for free. And thank you so much for everybody who's already a member on my Patreon. You help me make videos like this, and as you know, I'm going full-time doing this now, so thank you so much. I'm really hoping that you become a more fearless nature journaler, so get out there and keep doing it. Bye.